Ireland, 9 votes.
A moment that changes all kinds of everything.
Our own Dana has won the Eurovision Song Contest.
Case number 8 from Dana.
Suddenly, I was in this whirlwind.
Dana!
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 Why don't you simply answer the questions that I wish to put to you?
I couldn't sing. I'm okay as long as I don't talk about it.
People are sitting at home going, what's she talking about?
Yes, I don't want to discuss it. It was the most awful time.
We are very proud to have with us Dana.
Beautiful.
50 years ago, an 18-year-old Dana went to Amsterdam for the Eurovision Song Contest. This is the first time she's been back.
I've been told to speak to you. My name is Dana, and your name is?
Jim.
Jim.
Yes.
This was taken the day after I won Eurovision, and they said that you're the man who would know if you have this boat or one like it.
It's the celebrity boat.
Going to Amsterdam was really an adventure. I had never been abroad before. My mother and grandmother came with me, and that was an effort for them because they had to buy their own tickets. Ireland had not won before, so there was no expectation of Ireland winning.
To relive it, I was kind of like,
I had a week's holiday, really.
Dana, or Rosemary Brown as she was known then, was brought up in a city with a rich musical tradition. But in the late 60s, just before she won Eurovision, it was also deeply divided.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are demanding homes, employment, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. We do not wish bloodshed or violence.
The best known woman in Northern Ireland in 1969 was Bernadette Devlin, the Unity MP.
We all barricade went up on the Iron Sea and the wind special, trying to take them down.
She became nationally and internationally recognised. But there's another woman from Northern Ireland who is internationally famous, and it's Dana. And you couldn't have had two more extremes.
I was one of 7. A sister died before I was born, so one of 6 surviving. And we lived in London, first of all. I remember clearly going back to Derry, and we moved to a new estate that was just being built on the hill, called the Cregan Estate.
I never knew you lived here.
Is this Karen?
That's Nisha.
Hi Nisha, how are you, darling? So this house was always filled with musicians, always filled with musicians. And the poor told us to escape out of there when we weren't allowed out to play. My mother worked in a shirt factory, as did her mother. And yet I don't remember her not being in the house. And my father was a very fine trumpeter. And because there was never very much work for men in Derry, there were periods when he would go away to work and then come back home again. I started out as a folk singer. Friday night I'd do 1 gig, and then Saturday night I'd do maybe 2 gigs. I learned how to put on makeup in the dark, bumping down the road to Dublin. Now I can hardly make up at home. I have to make up in the car. I think for me, going and singing in Dublin at the weekends, that was like a different world, because then you'd come back, there'd be checkpoints, barricades, and I think most people thought, this is going to end soon because this is not Derry.
You have the re-emergence of the IRA, you have Republican and Loyalist paramilitaries, you have state violence, you have such a contested space, particularly in areas like Derry. They really become cauldrons, and it's clear things will never be the same again.
Dana's family were now living in the Rossville flats in the Bogside, a flashpoint for conflict in the city.
It was on the street, just where you see the traffic going up and down, that we watched these running battles between the police, the B specials, and the young men of this area. For a lot of the time, certainly before Eurovision when I was going to school, you just got up and did what you had to do. Life goes on and people are very resilient, and you just do what you have to do.
Meanwhile in Dublin, ex-members of the show band scene, printers Jackie Smith and Derry Lindsay, were trying to write a song capable of winning Ireland's National Song Contest and a ticket to Eurovision.
I played in bands and show bands, and like 80 or 90% of the guys who did that, we were not professional class musicians. I had written songs off and on ever since the early 60s. Jackie Smith had never written songs, so we wrote 4 or 5 songs together. And then at the end of November, we said, will we put a song in for the National Song Contest?
The Irish National Song Contest was run by the then head of RTÉ-like entertainment, Tom McGeagh. He saw potential in Derry and Jackie's song, and he knew the perfect singer.
Then Tom rang back just before Christmas, and he said, I have a little song. He said, I think it would suit you. Would you sing it? That song was All Kinds of Everything, and that song changed my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the 15th Eurovision Song Contest here in Amsterdam.
Oh my goodness. Looks just the same. It's very beautiful to me that this theatre is unchanged.
There were 12 countries competing at Eurovision in 1970. Dana and Ireland would be performing last. The bookies' favourite was the UK's Mary Hopkin, and she'd already had a #1 hit.
The Eurovision was absolutely huge. I mean, it was huge for Ireland anyway. You were involved in a competition, a ridiculous idea, really, of comparing one song to another. Ireland really got behind it in a big way. The world was able to be made into a smaller place by television.
We weren't that confident, to be honest with you. In fact, our first aim was not to come last. We still thought that not who's there was going to win. Guy Bonnet sang for France, a lot of people fancied him. Katja Epstein, German girl. Julian Iglesias was there.
I had long hair, and the makeup artist decided that she would like to do something a little unusual. When I walked on to sing, Tom McGeagh stopped me and he said, "What's that on your head, a Sputnik?" And he said to the makeup artist, get rid of that. So she left it down, it kept floating in my eyes, and she rummaged through a drawer in the makeup room and found a clasp. So she stuck this clasp in my hair, and that's how my hair ended up as it was.
Finally, it was the song's big moment, with a new arrangement from popular Irish composer Phil Coulter.
Do-do-do-do-do. Phil Coulter wrote this 5 or 6 or 8 bar introduction, and that was a masterpiece because anytime the song that comes on the radio, you know immediately it's All Kinds of Everything.
A stool. Oh my gosh. And that's just about where I would have been. If I went too far back, I'd fall off the back. If I was too far forward, I'd slip off the front during the song.
So I just had to kind of hop up on the stool. And I remember thinking, I really hope I don't mess this up.
Snowdrops and daffodils, butterflies and bees, sailboats and fishermen, things of the sea.
There are people who write political songs to a degree they're trying to give a message.
Early morning dew,
To me, all songs are love songs.
all kinds of everything remind me of you.
50 years ago, when I sat here, I had absolutely no inkling, not 1 second's thoughts that I might win it. It was an incredible change of not just my life, but the life of those very close to me. It was life-changing.
A fellow turned round to us from the row in front, Mickey Most, who was, I think, Mary Hopkins' manager. He said, if she doesn't fall off the stool, I think you guys are going to win.
All kinds of everything remind me of you.
And this great feeling of relief. Oh, you know, I've given it my best shot. I didn't get nervous in the middle. I kept going till the end. And then I exited the stage.
Hello, Holland. Will you please transmit your votes to me?
Here are the results of the Dutch jury.
United Kingdom, 3 votes.
The voting started.
Ireland, 5 votes.
And we almost immediately got a lead. I said to Jackie, I said, this is going nicely.
United Kingdom, 4 votes.
But England started to plug us back.
Then they moved us to the side of the stage.
Allô la Belgique.
But as we'd moved, a very big vote had come in for Ireland.
Ireland, 9 votes.
And then suddenly the stage manager grabbed me saying, you've won. But there was another vote to come in.
United Kingdom, 4 votes.
Ireland, 2 votes.
I said, no, I have won, there's no vote coming in.
And that completes the voting of the Dutch jury.
Then Mary, who was beside me, she said, very quietly, she said, you have won. Go with it.
Our own Ghana has won the Eurovision Song Contest.
And the next moment I was walking down that slope again. In a daze. I was absolutely in a daze.
Derry, Lindsay and Jackie Smith, they're absolutely thrilled, I'm sure, congratulating Ghana. This is certainly a great night for the Irish.
I got up on the stool successfully again and started to sing the song, and it looked to me like half the audience was moving to the stage. And the minute I finished, I was surrounded with a sea of photographers. I'd never seen so many light bulbs.
I can tell you here in Amsterdam there's going to be some celebrating tonight with the Irish party.
And then all of a sudden they parted like the Red Sea. And there was my mum and grandmother who gave me a great big hug.
Ireland's win was completely unexpected, and a special VIP flight was hastily organised to bring the team home. Operation Dana was proudly written on the side.
And then she comes home as the winner. And she's from Derry, and she's very young, and she looks proper and prim.
I think Dana's Eurovision win was momentous. For a short period of time, she was able to give respite from conflict and strife, and she united the country in pride and celebration.
After Dublin, Operation Dana headed home to RAF Ballykelly. It was the first time that a commercial plane had flown from the Republic to Northern Ireland.
There's also the interesting north-south dimension. Because this was being celebrated in Southern Ireland, and Dana was a voice from a community in Northern Ireland. If Dana had been singing about tear gas in Derry, perhaps it would have been different. The fact that Dana was singing such a song of innocence, that made it, of course, something that was utterly non-contentious.
One week I was in school with my friends. I knew what I wanted to do with my life.
All kinds of everything.
I was about to sit my A-levels. I was going to be a music teacher and English literature teacher. And then suddenly I was in this whirlwind.
Have you any follow-up song to All Kinds of Everything?
Oh, I haven't had time even to think about it. There's been so many photographs and so many things to do.
What are your immediate plans?
Just to have a rest.
It wasn't just Dana who was out of her depth. Her manager was a local teacher called Tony Johnston. He had helped with Dana's studies, and she sometimes stayed with his family after school.
I was a teacher. She was my pupil. I just had to look after her. I had to try and keep things as quiet as I could.
I think Tony was afraid that someone would step in and take me away from him. I was isolated from my family, and I really needed them at that time. I needed that support. I was staying at his house. I was supposed to go to Portugal the following day. He couldn't travel with me, so he wanted a stranger to travel with me, and I just couldn't face it, and I ran away. I got up in the middle of the night and I walked in complete darkness down to the main road, and I hitched a lift to a friend's house. He was a milkman actually, and he said, after you do the milk round, why don't you do it with me? So I did. He went all down through the route stamp at my school and everything, and he just talked to me. And he said, you know, I don't think you'd run away. And I said, no, take me home. And there was pandemonium, and I walked in to our flat, and my mother was just in tears. And I just thought, I can't do this. And that was what led to the breakup with Tony.
A teacher must be prepared to give his pupils up. It's the law of nature. There are birds that beat their young out of the nest, but I didn't have to beat Dan out of the nest. She flew well anyway.
Dana headed to London with her mum to find a new manager. They had a list of potential targets, including a young Michael Grade.
He said he'd love the manager to look after her. And I said to him, but you won't make her wear them low-cut dresses, will you? And he said, no, I won't. He said, I won't, Mrs. Brown.
I remember thinking, oh, Mum, I just wish the ground would open up and I could disappear into it.
They eventually chose Dick Katz, who would manage her for 9 years and oversee a career that included chart hits, European tours, and endless television appearances.
Here on Top of the Pops is Dana.
Isn't life a little bit like a crossword puzzle, giving you lots of trouble, or scratching my...
Once I was with Dick Katz. From that point, I was just on every television show imaginable.
Let's hear your warm welcome for the lovely Dana. The lovely Dana.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest for this evening, Dana.
I worked constantly, Sunday to Sunday.
We would like you to meet the girl who gave Granny the gold disc. Yes, it's Dana.
I think I always had a good work ethic. I loved my work. You know, I didn't in any way resent it. I loved being with people. And I mean, what's not to love?
In 1974, Dana joined GTO Records. It was with this newly formed label that she would have her biggest hits.
Please tell him that I said hello. The songs were really hits throughout the world with GTO. And it seemed that everything we touched worked.
GTO was run by Dick Leahy and Lawrence Myers, who had been looking after massive names since the 60s.
She has something that was unique in the record business, the most beautiful voice. Dana's voice is gold. Now I was managing Bowie, New Seekers. Dana sort of fitted in quite nicely, from my point of view, as being someone different. She won Eurovision, she was known, and I can make great records with her. That's what it's all about. The key to success in those days was radio play and television exposure.
This week's number 8 from Dana, and please tell him that I said hello.
And then, if the producer of Top of the Pops fancied your artist on Top of the Pops, it would then just take off.
Top of the Pops was a religion on Thursday night. It was the thing. Every Thursday night, that half hour was just the single most important thing. And if a song went from number 24 to number 9, that was the biggest jump of the week. These things were really important.
I had watched Top of the Pops religiously every Thursday night. The streets of Derry were empty because everybody was watching it.
It's gonna be a cold, cold Christmas without you.
And then suddenly to be there was just unbelievable. And I remember being told after we did that Top of the Pops with Cocoa Christmas that the following week it was selling 30,000 copies a day. They could hardly keep up, and increasing. So it was that important a platform, and I don't think there's one like it today.
Building on the success of Cold, Cold Christmas, in 1976, Dana recorded Fairy Tale. There was a belief that her career was about to go up a notch.
Imagine what a fool you're gonna make of me.
I was just about to be launched into America, and there was like worldwide record deals. It was a very different kind of a song for me. It was a dance number.
A fairy tale, I do believe in you, believe your fairy tale.
We knew it was very special, and certainly the record company did feel it was the number one record. But the minute I started promoting it, I opened my mouth to sing, and I couldn't sing. I went back down to London. I saw a throat specialist that night. He said I have to operate immediately. There was the possibility that it was cancer. He had to cut into the cord, and he didn't know if it was malignant or benign. And my mother was standing at the door, and she was in tears. And he operated the next morning, and it wasn't malignant, thank God.
I remember sitting down with Dick and saying, do we pull it and reissue it? Had she been able to promote it, I think it was a number one record.
I didn't never realise it was so serious, at the time. But they told us she wasn't to sing or speak for 12 months. And of course they had her back singing in about 6 weeks. The agents had her back singing.
It was a long road back. It was really 5 years before I could sing normally.
Fairy Tale never did reach #1 in Ireland or the UK, but being forced to slow down did bring benefits.
I had time to look at myself. And I realized that 99% of my time, my thought, my effort revolved around my work. And because I loved my work, I didn't feel that.
Let's calm things down rather nicely. Dana's back on top of the pops. She's going to put some words together.
And it also gave me a chance to reflect on my relationship with Damien.
You're living in a dream world where all the words I long for get written down in love songs.
I think it would have been very unlikely that we would have ended up being married. I would just have kept going and not realised, and then you suddenly look back and you think, wow, my work doesn't hug me at night. My work doesn't support me emotionally.
Whichever world you're living in, where I belong, it's high time.
So when I look back on that time now, I am grateful.
Damien Scallon was a hotelier from Uri who met Dana when she performed at his hotel in 1972. They married in 1978.
We didn't realise it was the 10th anniversary of civil rights. So there were international crews in Derry as well, waiting for something terrible to happen. And what they experienced was a party for the whole city. Oh, it was absolutely wonderful.
All night, love everything, remind me of you.
After the wedding, Dana spent her time between Uri and London and soon returned to the charts.
Dana's back too. She's got a new single and something is cooking in the kitchen.
Something's cooking in the kitchen. Something's brewing in the air. Something's running in your microwave and breathing in your refrigerator.
Across Northern Ireland, though, the political violence showed no sign of going away. For Dana's husband, Damien, life close to the border in Uri was getting increasingly difficult.
When we married, the hotel had been bombed, I think, 5 or 6 times. I could see that he had a tremendous peace in the middle of this awful turmoil, leading bomb squads around the hotel. And gradually, I began to feel that deepening of my own faith, which was such a strength to me, and is still a great strength to me through my life.
In 1979, the Ardmore Hotel was bombed for the final time. That same year, Pope John Paul II visited Ireland.
And there it is, a Polish Pope, the Irish people greeting each other, and what a greeting.
1.25 million people came to share Mass with him in Dublin's Phoenix Park.
It's extraordinary how many people here are in tears.
The visit inspired Dana to write her first religious song.
I was recording a series in Manchester.
Wake up Sunday, wake up to Sunday morning.
So I would go back and forth every week. It was during one of those trips, that Pope John Paul II came to Ireland, so I missed it.
Hello, and welcome to Wake Up Sunday.
Damien said, his motto was very beautiful. Totus tuus, it means totally yours.
As I stand on the ground where you stood.
And we thought that is really a beautiful motto. And before we got to Newry, we'd actually written a song called Totus tuus. And it went to #1 in Ireland. So I always said to Damien, Did you ever think you'd write a #1 song?
Throughout the 80s, Dana was still working hard in entertainment.
Driving the girls wild into the bargain, Daniel O'Donnell. What's it like singing to that kind of reaction?
It's nice.
Is it?
It's after the screen music, it's good.
Is that right?
She even wrote the official Football World Cup song for Northern Ireland in 1982. Organisers hoped a non-sectarian anthem like Your Man would unite the country in support. In England, a pantomime career as Snow White was also taking off, a role she was made for. The success of Totus Tuus led to an entire album of religious music, and in 1987 she was invited to sing for the Pope in New Orleans.
Holy Father, we are pleased to present Dana singing an original piece in your honor.
Dana had finally broken America.
As I stand on the ground where you stood, and I walk in your footsteps.
The Scallons now had 4 children, and in 1990 they moved to the States. Damien had secured a job managing a retreat for a Catholic cable television network.
We moved to Birmingham, Alabama. It was completely different to anything I ever knew, but we really felt it was a chance for us as a family to focus on just being a family. And people wouldn't know who I was and what I did. It was a time I wouldn't have missed.
They hadn't been out there long before Dana was appearing on the station.
Say Yes with Dana. Along with special guest, the Dominican Sisters of Nashville and Sister Bruce McKenna.
You know, I was thinking what I was going to say to you today, and I want to say that each one of us is created unique.
Dana was now entrenched in the American Christian music scene, and in 1993 she was back singing for the Pope at a World Youth Day event in Denver.
We are one body in Christ, and He came that we might have life.
Back in Ireland, in 1997, a resignation took place that would have a profound effect on Dana. Mary Robinson, Ireland's first female president and a Liberal campaigning lawyer, announced she was moving to the UN. The search began to find her successor, and Dana's name came up as a possible candidate.
I received a letter I didn't know who it was from, saying that Mary Robinson was stepping down early and would I consider running for president. Well, of course, it was totally ridiculous. I didn't even show it to Damien. I just tore it up, threw it in the bin. Because we saw politics fail in the north of Ireland,
I said you'd call him back.
I didn't take any interest in politics. I didn't want to be in politics. I was very happy with what I was doing.
Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which are thy us, and thy branches through Christ our Lord. Amen.
And then suddenly it's on the front page of paper that I'm considering running for the presidency of Ireland. It just was a gradual thing. I just felt I should do it.
When President Robinson announced last month that she would step down, speculation was rife as to who would succeed her. Few would have imagined that the singer Dana would enter the race. She shot to fame as a teenager from the Bogside after winning the Eurovision Song Contest in 1970 with All Kinds of Everything, and captured the hearts of the nation with her wholesome, childlike image.
The Irish presidency had typically been a place where an aging politician would retire to
And the idea of someone like Dana running for presidency would have been, frankly, hilarious in the 1990s.
There was huge surprise. There was a scepticism about the idea of a celebrity candidate, and not just a celebrity candidate, but a celebrity from ages ago.
Fintan O'Toole talked about her bouncing in from Alabama with her banjo on her knee. It was very cruel, but it was very funny. There were a lot of those kind of uncharitable comments on her, but I thought, well, that'll spice it up a bit.
Dana had 3 months until the polls, and no party political support in the Oireachtas, the Irish Parliament.
Despite her continued popularity here, many observers believe she might have trouble gaining the requisite political backing from members of the Oireachtas or a resolution from each of 4 county councils.
A very small number had to sign your nomination paper. I think it was only like about 20 signatures. So we thought, oh, well, that'll be easy to get. I think I got 2.
Yeah, you look over to me, the 2 of you.
And so the only route was the councils. And no one, as an independent, had ever secured a nomination.
There were 32 local authorities in Ireland at the time, and in order to get a nomination, you had to get the support of 4 of them. This was a route that had never been tried before in Irish politics.
So we got a people carrier, and we'd be driving to all the different councils, and I'd be in the back on a mobile phone, and I'd hand it into the front, and then they'd say, we'll just put you through to Dana, she's in the next room, in the back of the van.
And undeterred by the big party machines, Dana brought her campaign today to the west of Ireland and Galway.
Traditionally, the presidency was a carve-up between the 2 big political parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. So the very idea that you would have a candidate who would not be of either of those political parties was very important for democracy and very important in elections as well.
This was an historic meeting. Dana had secured the first of the required 4 nominations.
The councils nominated me. The first time ever in the history of the state that an independent was nominated.
Mary Benaki, Mary McAleese, Derek Nally, Lady Roach, Dana Rosemary Scallon.
Dana was now in the race, but the media were deeply sceptical and suspicious.
Here was a candidate who was very much associated with the church internationally.
Well, listen, John wants to speak to you.
Was Dana going to be a conservative Catholic candidate for conservative Catholic voters? Was that what was going on?
Tonight we're going to talk to the presidential candidate Dana Rosemary Scallon. Call us at 1-8.
I did a really difficult interview with Vincent Brown.
Did you favour the decriminalisation of homosexual practices?
Why do you ask me that?
I want to find out about your values.
Well, why do you want... Why has been asked to any other candidate?
You're the first candidate I've interviewed since they declared themselves to be a candidate.
Well, I say, why am I being pilloried in this way?
Why are you so defensive? Why don't you simply answer the question?
Why can't you ask me
did you welcome the
about issues that matter to this country as a whole? The fact that in the middle of an economic boom, there are children sleeping on the streets. I didn't know his form. And he'd be big sighs in his head and his hand. I thought he was sick.
All right.
We had one advert interval and I said, are you feeling okay? Can I get you water? So I thought he was sick.
If people have the right to own what they earn, then how can you say you're in favour of the state redistributing their wealth?
No, I'm talking about the government ensuring.
But the government must do so by redistributing wealth that is earned.
Well, then there's no problem.
What do you mean?
It was tough. We just seemed to go round and round on it. But I did answer it. And I've always tried to see both points of view. I have tried to be very honest.
Honest. Okay.
We are indeed. And afterwards, this great big man walked towards me, and I thought, oh no, he's going to give me a tough time as well. And he said, I heard you on the Vincent Brown show. And if I was near him, I'd punch him right in the face. And I thought, oh. So there was a turning tide.
This is her personality. She's lovely. Yeah, she's just beautiful.
She was an arch conservative,
who really tapped into an idea in the rural Irish communities that change was coming too fast and that change was being delivered by liberal elites living in Dublin 4 who really didn't understand the rural way of life.
I don't always agree with this thing about the liberal establishment. But I think in her case it was true. You know, a lot of the commentators just didn't agree with her views. They didn't like her views. They didn't care for where she was coming from.
For a lot of it, I was petrified. I mean, I'd get up in the morning and I'd think, I've got to do a debate.
You are standing, Dana, for the most important job in this country.
Yes.
And the
yes.
only issue of importance that will come your way in the next 7 years, the only one, is the one of abortion.
The fact that she said to Gay Byrne that she would not sign abortion into law gave the impression that she was a straight talker and that she was someone who stuck solidly to her views and was not afraid to espouse those views.
Do you have a difficulty?
I'm being very honest, I would have a difficulty. Yes,
Okay.
I would.
That's fine. That's an answer, Dana. And might that difficulty extend to resigning over
It
it?
would depend on the circumstances, it might.
Okay, that's a perfectly good answer. Well done. All right.
I think she was a breath of fresh air. Now, again, I say that despite the fact I don't agree with a lot of her views. And I think it's important to hear all the different voices in society. Let it all out.
Voting took place on the 30th of October 1997, with a turnout of 47%.
Dana appears to be a good third place with 13% of first preference votes, 5 points ahead of Eddie Roach in fourth place with 8%, and Derek Nally completing the whole field, 4% first preference votes.
Mila Mahagov. Yeah.
Backed by Fianna Fáil, Mary McAleese won the presidency. But as an independent, Dana's third place changed the nature of presidential elections forever.
Dana beat the system in 1997. It was an extraordinary success for someone who had no political background.
Dana summed it up very nicely herself in a very good soundbite.
I'm just so delighted. I may not be the president, but I'm a president.
Buoyed by her achievement, 2 years later, Dana successfully stood in the European elections.
I was the first woman, an independent woman, elected to represent Connacht Ulster.
With a new job as an MEP in Brussels, the Scallon family's life in Alabama was over.
We had to sell our home, clear the house, and Damien. He always says I'm never there when he has to clear a house. And so we settled in Galway.
I think her political achievement, particularly obtaining a seat in the European Parliament, shouldn't be underestimated, particularly when the media are dismissing you as someone who really isn't in touch with the zeitgeist, who is trying to go back to values that we have left behind. For her to stand against that, to win the seat, and to stay in the European Parliament as a successful MEP is an achievement.
But it was kind of unbelievable. And I was the first independent accepted into the European People's Party, or as it was then, the Christian Democrats. I went to the first group meeting and they began to sing all kinds of everything. And I thought to myself, I never thought I'd be so glad to hear that song. Because of Eurovision, I wasn't a stranger to them, and they were not judging or hostile of me.
I think that Dana's image was changed forever by her entering politics, for good and for bad. No other musician has had the level of success in Irish politics that Dana has had.
Dana's time as an MEP ended in 2004, as she returned to entertainment as a contestant in the popular Irish television programme Jigs and Reels. But over in America, there was trouble brewing.
Damien and I had founded a record company in the United States with my sister and with my brother, John, who lived in England. What we discovered was, although we had founded it, we were not registered as having founded it. It was only in the names of my sister and her husband, which was a huge, huge shock. We said, you keep the company, and we are going to start afresh. That was in 2008. And I was almost immediately sued for piracy of my own recordings. And we were to discover that my sister and her husband had registered ownership of everything I'd ever recorded. And the next minute we were sued, and we ended up in court in America.
The court case was eventually settled. Dana was granted her copyright. In 2011, she once again stood to become Irish president, vowing to protect Ireland's constitutional primacy, including the laws enshrined in it around the rights of family, protection of life and marriage.
We can get through this. We have the ability to get through these difficulties.
7 people ran that year, 4 as independents.
It's onwards now. We're going to Cork and Waterford and Dublin City.
Well-known scholar and human rights campaigner David Norris was the initial favourite. Poet and scholar Michael D. Higgins was also an early frontrunner.
The 2011 presidential election took place in a very febrile atmosphere.
There was much more media attention on the candidates. They were asked much more robust questions. They were asked about their personal values, their background, who was supporting them. For many, it was a very bruising campaign.
You have to be a president that has judgment, and you have to be a president that is able, as it were.
I think you've got to consider as well what had changed by 2011 was the nature of the media. You have much more competition between different media outlets and different forms.
Journalists were hungry for stories and hungry for controversy and hungry for dirt, basically.
Nobody deserves what was done to either Dana or myself. Nobody deserves it. And nobody should have to suffer.
Before last week, Senator David Norris was riding high, but then news broke that in 1997, he wrote a letter pleading for leniency for his former partner.
The fallout from his disgraceful behaviour has now spread to me. I do not regret supporting and seeking clemency for a friend, but I do regret giving the impression that I did not have sufficient compassion.
I think every single candidate in the presidential election was shocked at the level of viciousness in that campaign.
On the eve of a vital television debate, Dana got some devastating news. A serious allegation had been made about a family member and leaked to the press.
I was stopped in the street by a reporter who told me that he had an affidavit from the alleged accuser saying that not only was there historic sex abuse by my brother, but that I had known about it for 30 years and I had hid it. And that there was going to be massive coverage. And I was doing a debate that night.
I would just like to make sure that it's a presidency of the people. I believe they know me and I believe they can trust me.
I felt I had to make a statement.
On that note, I have to make a very special announcement, please.
I felt very nervous and I just read out my statement.
It has come to my attention that yet further allegations, this time of a most untrue and malicious, vile nature, have been levelled against a member of my family.
Okay, Jannine, what allegation are you talking about?
I assure the Irish people
They
that
don't
I
know what
will
you're
leave no
talking about,
stone unturned.
People are sitting at home going, what's she talking about?
Yes, I don't want to discuss it here.
It's just like massive explosion.
It's not the first
you don't want
in your life.
That's
what
the
has the
reason.
allegation.
And I would just like...
And I just kept thinking of my children.
She became extremely upset, and I had to kind of put my arm around her and hold her. And I smuggled her out and got her away. Yeah. Because I don't think anybody should be put through that.
She looked very fragile and people felt uncomfortable watching it. And I think after that, her campaign sort of disintegrated.
It was terrible in 2011, but it was worse in 2014.
In 2014, Dana's brother John stood trial in England, accused of historic allegations of 3 counts of indecent assault on 2 girls aged under 16.
The jury of 6 men and 6 women found Mr. Brown not guilty of all the charges.
I came here an innocent man. I will be leaving an innocent man.
Very moved.
Yeah.
Very, very moved. It's a good man. Good, innocent man.
He was found innocent of all allegations, and therefore I was found to be innocent too. But it goes all around the world. And there are people who will never hear me speak about it, they'll never see this programme, but they're left with that headline. I've spoken with Sir Cliff Richard and Paul Gambattino and Louis Walsh, and it was a most awful time. Awful time, especially for my family. I had to try to hold on to normality, but I just found it so stressful. And I just felt safe in my home. And then I realised I can't live my life in my home. Much as I love it, I can't live my life in my home.
Okay, let's give it a go.
I've been to counselling, and that's like being passed around a ring. But at least you know it's out there and you leave it on the table.
It's like starting up an old car and had a chest infection.
I'm not like a victim. I know that there's much worse that people are suffering. I just have to deal with this and get stronger. And I will.
Hear what I say, I'm on my way.
In the summer of 2018, Dana went to Rome to record her first new album in 11 years.
Going back in the studio with Manny on drums, he used to play for Tears for Fears. And Nigel on bass, he used to play with Blondie. Once we were just sitting down together in that studio, just musicians together. It was so creative and it was beautiful and very healing.
My very special studio guest, Dana. Lovely to see you again. It's been too long. Today is the turn of Dana. Good afternoon, Dana.
Good afternoon.
Anybody who has had the amount of success that Dana had,
I'll give you a 5 in the morning before we walk, okay?
Brilliant. Thank you.
and has the ability and the voice that Dana has, it would never surprise me that they want to go back and try it again. And why not?
In late 2019, Dana returned home to visit her old school, Thornhill College.
I have a very vivid memory of these steps. And I had to walk up them to my first class, which would have been that little classroom up there. In my mind, I see it as it was. I'm hearing in my head the girls, I'm seeing them, and the teachers. So it would be very, very sad to see it like this if there wasn't a magnificent new school across the road.
Cut me down.
absolutely fantastic. I don't think I've ever experienced so many key changes in my life. You've made connections here, and these people that stand around you are going to be there all through your life.
Word is out that the local schoolgirl who conquered Eurovision is in town, and a choir of fans are gathering at the Guildhall to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Dana's historic win.
Would anybody be comfortable to go up on that first step? Keep going, we're all singing together, just keep going. Poppy's up there, that'd be lovely.
She had a lovely young voice. I'd forgotten how light and young her voice was.
There'll always be a market for a nice melody, beautifully sung. And that was Dana.
Gray skies are blue. All kinds of everything reminds me of you.
If I was talking to my 18-year-old self, I would say, enjoy it more. Don't keep thinking you look dreadful. Just enjoy it more and be a little kinder to yourself. Like everybody's life, there are the really hard things that happen. They either crush you completely or they make you stronger. And I'm working on that.
Great.